Imagine a wealth so vast it cannot be measured by modern standards. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, their fortunes are public, tracked, and debated. But in the shadows of history, there exists a dynasty whose wealth was once estimated to be in the trillions, adjusted for inflation. They didn't just own banks, they owned the debt of nations. They didn't just watch wars, they financed the armies on both sides. They built the railroads that connected Europe, funded the Suez Canal, and stabilized the global economy before central banks even existed. They are the Rothschilds, a family that rose from the slums of Frankfurt to become the masters of the universe. But with great power comes great suspicion. How did one family manage to control so much? And do they still pull the strings today? This is the true story of the richest dynasty in human history.
To understand the empire, we must first understand the struggle. The story doesn't begin in a palace, but in a prison of sorts. Frankfurt, Germany, the mid-1700s. Meyer Amschel Rothschild was born in the Judengasse, the Jewish ghetto. It was a single, cramped street, gated and locked at night. Jews were restricted by harsh laws, unable to live outside this narrow alley or conduct business freely. But Meyer Amschel was not an ordinary man. He was a visionary. He started as a dealer in rare coins, selling them to wealthy princes and aristocrats. He quickly realized a fundamental truth. If you want to be powerful, you must make yourself useful to the powerful. He became the court agent to Prince William of Hesse, one of the richest men in Europe. By managing the prince's money, Meyer learned the art of banking, lending, and interest, but he knew that a local business would never be an empire. So he made a decision that would change the world. Meyer had 5 sons. As they came of age, he didn't keep them close. He sent them away. Amschel stayed in Frankfurt. Solomon went to Vienna. Nathan, the most ambitious, went to London. Kalman went to Naples, and Jacob went to Paris. This wasn't just a family business anymore. It was the world's first multinational corporation. The symbol of their family became 5 arrows bundled together, stronger united than apart. And they were about to test that strength against the greatest chaos Europe had ever seen.
The early 19th century was defined by one man, Napoleon Bonaparte. His armies were tearing through Europe, toppling kings and rewriting borders. For most, this was a disaster. For the Rothschilds, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. With the 5 brothers stationed in the 5 major capitals of Europe, they created something no government had, a private communication network. While official news traveled by slow horse-drawn carriages, the Rothschilds used private couriers, fast boats, and, legend has it, even carrier pigeons. They could move gold across borders when armies couldn't. When the British Army, led by the Duke of Wellington, was fighting in Spain and Portugal, they were desperate for funds. The British government turned to Nathan Rothschild in London. Nathan took on the impossible task. He smuggled millions of pounds in gold through France, right under Napoleon's nose, to finance the British troops. It was a high-risk operation. One mistake and the family would be ruined, but they succeeded, earning not just a fortune in fees, but the eternal gratitude of the British Empire.
But the defining moment came in 1815, the Battle of Waterloo. The fate of Europe hung in the balance. If Napoleon won, the British stock market would crash. If Wellington won, it would soar. Traders in London were blind, waiting for news that would take days to arrive. But Nathan Rothschild already knew. His agents had watched the battle end and raced back to London hours ahead of the official government messengers.
There's a famous myth that Nathan walked into the stock exchange and started selling his bonds, tricking everyone into thinking the British had lost. Panic ensued, prices crashed, and then, at the last minute, he bought everything back at rock-bottom prices. While historians debate the exact details of that day, the outcome is undisputed. When the official news of victory arrived, prices skyrocketed. In a single day, the Rothschilds multiplied their wealth beyond comprehension. They had effectively bought the British economy.
By the mid-19th century, the Rothschilds were untouchable. They were no longer just participants in the economy. They were the economy. Their banks in London, Paris, and Vienna were more powerful than the treasuries of the nations they inhabited. They introduced the concept of international government bonds. If a king wanted to wage war, he borrowed from the Rothschilds. If a government wanted to build a palace, they went to the Rothschilds. This period is often called Pax Rothschildiana, a peace kept not by armies, but by bankers. The brothers would often refuse to lend money to nations if it meant a war that would disturb the balance of business. They had effectively privatized peace. But their money didn't just sit in vaults. They fueled the Industrial Revolution. In France and Austria, the Rothschilds financed the first major railway lines. They saw the future of transport and poured millions into steel and coal. In 1875, a crucial moment solidified their legendary status. The British Prime Minister, Benjamin Disraeli, had a sudden opportunity to buy shares in the Suez Canal, the most critical trade route between Europe and Asia. The Egyptian government was selling, but the British Parliament was not in session to approve the funds. Disraeli needed £4 million, a colossal sum at the time, overnight. He didn't go to the Bank of England. He went to Lionel de Rothschild. As the story goes, Lionel was eating grapes when the request came. He simply asked, "What is your security?" Disraeli replied, "The British government." Lionel nodded and approved the loan instantly. The next day, Britain controlled the Suez Canal. The Rothschilds had once again expanded the British Empire with the stroke of a pen. As the 20th century approached, the world was getting bigger, and so were the Rothschilds' ambitions. Their influence crossed the Atlantic. While they didn't establish a major bank in New York, a rare strategic mistake, they were heavily involved in American finance. Through agents like August Belmont, they helped finance trade and infrastructure in the rapidly growing United States. During the American Civil War, rumors swirled about their involvement, though records suggest they remained cautious, wary of the instability. However, in other parts of the world, they were aggressive. They financed the government of Brazil. They invested heavily in the Russian oil fields of Baku, competing with the Rockefellers. And in South Africa, they backed Cecil Rhodes and the De Beers diamond monopoly. If you have ever bought a diamond ring, you were touching a market that the Rothschilds helped create. Their influence also shaped geopolitics. In 1917, the British government issued the Balfour Declaration, a statement supporting a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. That letter was not addressed to a foreign leader or a diplomat. It was addressed to Lord Rothschild. It is a stark reminder that when governments needed to speak to the Jewish community or make global decisions, they spoke to this family first. But as the world wars of the 20th century arrived, the dynamics of power began to shift. The era of family-owned banking dynasties was ending, and the era of corporate institutions and central banks was beginning. When you possess this level of influence, you inevitably attract enemies. For over 2 centuries, the Rothschilds have been the center of more conspiracy theories than any other group in history. You have heard the rumors that they control the U.S. Federal Reserve, that they lead the Illuminati, that they secretly rule the world from behind a curtain. Why do these myths persist? Partly, it is because of their intense secrecy. The family motto is,
Concordia, integritas, industria. Harmony, integrity, industry. But their unwritten rule was silence. They rarely gave interviews, they destroyed their private correspondence, they married within the family, cousins marrying cousins, to keep the wealth from diluting. This secrecy created a vacuum, and the public filled it with wild theories. However, the reality of the 20th century was less about world domination and more about survival. World War II was devastating for the family. The Nazis seized their assets in Austria and France. Palaces were looted, art was stolen, and family members had to flee to America. Furthermore, the banking world changed. The vast wealth of the 19th century was split among hundreds of descendants. Today, the Rothschild fortune is divided among many heirs. While they still own investment banks and prestigious vineyards, they are no longer the singular financial superpower they once were. Today's giants, BlackRock, Vanguard, Apple, manage trillions of dollars, eclipsing the modern Rothschild holdings.
Yet, to dismiss them as history would be a mistake. The Rothschilds invented international banking. They created the bond market that governments still rely on today. They showed the world that information is more valuable than gold. From the ghettos of Frankfurt to the highest corridors of power, their journey is a testament to strategic brilliance and ruthless ambition. They may not rule the world in the way conspiracy theorists claim, but the foundation of the modern financial world was built by their hands. Every empire has its kings, every nation has its leaders, but for 200 years, one family proved that you don't need a crown to be royalty. You just need a bank. This was the story of the Rothschilds.